Hi everyone, welcome to episode 137. My name is Rachel and I can be found pretty much everywhere as well for pearls. This is a podcast devoted to all things spinning, and we knit with our handspun, we weave with our handspun, we talk about handspun. It's all about spinning. Welcome to new viewers, welcome to returning viewers, and welcome to our Patreon community who are chatting away already. Holy smokes. So I was reading this really intense article that has nothing to do with any of this stuff here. But I was watching the time. So I had the article on the screen. I've got multiple monitors and I had the article on it's still up. I have it on one of my monitors, and the time stamp is like right below. So I was watching the time, making sure that we would start on time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm reading this really intense article. Then I was like, oh, I didn't put the pop-up chat up yet, because I can move the chat over to a different screen so that I can watch it. And there was already like 2 or 3 screens of scrolling. So I was quickly catching up. So welcome everybody. And thank you so much for joining us. We've got some new people in the chat today, and we've got everybody. Yeah, it's just awesome to see you. So thank you so much for being here. A couple of people have colds and aren't feeling well. So prayers for you to get better really quickly. And I think we'll just get into the show. So today we've got some community stuff that you guys have shared that I wanted to share on the podcast. And that'll take us through the first part of the show. And then I have some projects that I've been working on that I'm hoping that you guys will be equally excited about, that I can share with you. So for those who are part of the Patreon community and are having trouble getting into the live chat and whatnot, there is a post that I made for live chat assistance to get you in there and get you active. And for those who are part of the Attentive Spinner tier, if you guys can watch out for the doodle that I will be posting in the next week or so to sign up to record some woolen spinning episodes with me. So look forward to that. We have a really quick announcement for the January episode thread giveaway. So this is open to everybody who's a member of the Ravelry group. So you don't have to be a patron, just the Ravelry group. And the prompt was, what did you learn in 2019? So this was a giveaway running for the month of January. And we'll have another one now for February, since the first week in February. Happy February, everybody. The kids at school have already been exchanging Valentines. So they have like an inter-school mail system, and they can send Valentines to like teachers and other students and support. And so James, so cute, on Monday comes home from school and he says to me, do you think Nora has already gotten any Valentines from anyone? And I said, oh, I don't know. Like, we should check her folder, because everything comes home in their folders. And I asked her, I said, she was standing right there, and I was like, Nora, did you get any Valentine's Day? And he said no. Or she said no. And she goes tootling off, and James is like, don't tell her, but I made her a Valentine and I sent it in the school mail and she should get it tomorrow. It was just the nicest thing that he had thought of her. So really, really cute. So what did you learn in 2019 was the question. And actually, she's in the chat today. I just saw her name pop by. Trin is here. It was Trin's response in post number 47. She learned to spin and she spun her first sweater, which was amazing. So well done, Trin. If you can send me your mailing address, either on Ravelry or Patreon, I don't care which, whatever works best for you. And I will pop that in the mail to you. I think you're in Denmark, is that right? I know you're in Scandinavia, but I will pop that in the mail. So that was the bat that's right there. That will be going out to you, Trin. Now for February, we had a question from Amy. I think it was Amy. And it was actually, I'll be sending out 4 ounces of Shetland. Let me reach it. Hang on. Sorry for the awkwardness. It's this pin drafted. It's about 4 ounces of pin drafted Shetland from Disdarrow Ranch. They used to be located just outside of Kamloops, British Columbia in Barrier, but Lori has actually moved to Tappan, British Columbia, which is where West Coast Color is also situated, which is really cool. They're neighbors now. And Amy had asked me if we could ask the question, what is the item that you made that you love to wear the most and why? Which I thought was a fantastic prompt for February. So what is the item that you've made that you love to wear the most and why. So something that you wear a lot, that you love, and why. About the calendars, I'm not sure if I'm going to do calendars this year. Eve, great question. I've been meaning to mention that on the show. The last couple of times that I ordered them, they came and they were defective, and I ended up having to reorder them, and they did replace them on one occasion. So, yeah, you did win, Trin. So I'm sort of on the fence about whether or not we're going to continue the calendars or not. If you guys really like the calendars, I can totally try again, and we could do that. So yeah, let me know. All right. So that's exciting, Trin. I'm so glad you're here today. That's fantastic. So we have snow outside. For the wool stream yesterday, it had started to snow, and some of you were there yesterday for the wool stream, and it was snowing and snowing and snowing and snowing, and it hasn't actually melted yet. So our front yard is covered, and there's still like slushy, wet snow in our cul-de-sac, and I'm staring at it as I'm streaming. And our house is actually surprisingly warm, which is funny because we don't really run our furnace very much. It only kicks on if the temperature inside the house drops below 16 degrees Celsius. And so it's not on, but this room gets so warm that I've found the last couple of times that I've been streaming, I'm just getting too hot. So I'm wearing a short sleeve t-shirt. So it makes me laugh, Kelly, about your comment about, 1 degree Celsius or 34 Fahrenheit, and you're like, shorts weather. We don't adjust for the different seasons, because all of our climates that we're in, whether it's the car or a house or work, it's all temperature controlled, right? And so we don't change what we wear, and winter never comes. So I've been very aware of that this last season, and I've been trying not to wear quite so many layers because I find I'm just so hot all the time. So, and we need to cool down. So yeah, it's so funny that that's what you guys were chatting about, because I was literally just thinking about that. That was the article that I was reading, actually. It was about metabolic winter. Okay, let's start with Imoni's post that she threw up in the Ravelry thread. That's our hand spun thread. It's a place in our Ravelry group for everybody and anybody to just share what they're spinning and the yarns that they make. Because so often, you post your stuff on Instagram, or maybe you post it on your projects page on Ravelry, but sometimes it's just nice to be able to share it with a group of people that really get it and want to see what you're making and see what you're working on. So this was an Advent spin that she did. I always forget that it's the opposite side of me. It's 30% bond, superfine merino, organic Polworth, silk, bamboo, and silk noil. And she wheel spun it on her shacked sidekick, and then she plied it on her woolly Anne. Beautiful spinning. That yellow over there, it just makes my heart sing. It's a traditional 2-ply, and her total yardage was 720 yards. It's a lot of yardage. Beautiful spinning, Imoni. So even, and twist angle is beautiful. We have some everybody's an incredible spinner in our community, but we do have a few people that are really what I would call like master spinners, and it's just so wonderful to see their work. Now, group A, this is Rebecca's spinning. And actually, I think last show we shared some of Rebecca's 51 yarns progress as well. And she just popped into the chat. So it's so good to see her here. I was going to go back in the group A for our 51 yarn spin along that's going on for it's a spin along that we are doing over 2 years. And we started in January of last year, so January 2019. And so we've got 2 groups running now. We've got group A that started at the beginning, and now we also have group B that started last month in January 2020. So it's not too late to join group B if you want to join. Please don't hesitate to do that. We've got there's 2 tiers depending on whether you want just a monthly vlog that accompanies the content, or if you want a PDF download as well that goes through my own process and some reflections and some tips and tricks and learning. So for group A, for December of 2019, so it was one of the last yarns that we made. It was yarn number 23 out of the book. It's JC Boggs Faulkner's book, 51 Yarns. 51 yarns to spin before you cast off. And it was yarn number 23 was the boucle. And a lot of people in our community had never made a boucle before. So it was an awesome opportunity for a lot of people in the community to really push their comfort zone and to really push their comfort in terms of like what they've done before. So Rebecca says, this was post number 900. I think we're over 1,000 now in that thread for Group A. It's just unbelievable. She says, oh dear, this was so much fun. Thanks, Rachel, for a very helpful tutorial. It gave me a real aha moment that made the spinning very fun and not stressful. I'm really glad, Rebecca. That's wonderful feedback. Thank you. It was fun to find pictures of that old first boucle that I tried 10 years ago and realize how much I've learned. I also included some more specific, so Rebecca wrote quite a big blog post that's associated with this yarn. So she said that she's also included some more specific descriptions of how she spun because there was very little how-to in the book. So she, on her blog, which actually, Rebecca, if you could just put your blog address in the chat for people who are watching later, if they want to go in and have a look, that would be awesome if you don't mind. She did a woven swatch as well as a knitted one for this yarn because she was super curious about how it would look. I love this woven swatch, and a lot of people love working in their weaving with boucle yarn, so it's really cool to see a boucle woven. I think you did this on some sort of a pin loom, which is really cool. The picture makes it look a little scrubby, but the loops are so soft and bouncy and fun to touch on the light base fabric. I hope everyone braves the unknown and tries this one, even if it turns out a little zany. It's so fun to break down how these crazy yarns are made. So true. So true. So, yeah, really, I'm so glad, Rebecca, that you had an opportunity to share that, and that you took it a step further to do some sampling and swatching with it, because I think that's where a lot of our learning really happens. It's one thing to make our yarns and to enjoy the process of spinning and to enjoy sort of the moving meditation of spinning, but it's another to take it one step further and to actually work with them. You might go along for years spinning and spinning and spinning and falling into a little bit of a default where you're making the same yarns over and over again. And then all of a sudden, you start working with your yarns because you've amassed this big stash, and they're not quite what you thought they were. And so for me, my sort of, when I took my spinning to the next level in terms of really learning a lot of what was going on at the wheel and how twist affects our yarns and how twist affects the underlying fiber and the underlying characteristics of the wool or fiber that you've chosen to work with, whether it's plant-based fibers or wool. When I started working with them, that was when my skill as a spinner really improved exponentially. There's that initial learning curve of actually learning how to spin that's very, very steep. And then there's the next big learning curve when you start to work with your yarns. Yeah, I'm not a big boucle fan either, but I think to make them and to understand how they're made is a really great opportunity and a really good exercise to go through. You don't have to spin yards and yards and yards of it, but I think it's really important to put yourself through that sort of skill of learning how to manipulate your wheel to make the yarns, because it's a bit of a mind twist, and it's important to sort of do that and to go through that process. And actually, boucle as weft is incredible, and I think it's Imoni, but it might be somebody else in our community who's done some weaving with boucle and used it as the weft, and it's just gorgeous. I do actually have some videos for Bast Fibers, Eve. Those were done back, I want to say, I can look it up, actually. I want to say that we did that in the spring of 2017, I want to say. Let me have a quick look. I have my Bible of all things. This is my Bible of all things woolen spinning related, like all the content, all the planning, all the brainstorming. Yeah, it was April to June of 2018. Plant-based fibers. We did cotton, flax, and ramie. Yeah, that was April to June of 2018. So if you go to the index, it's all there. The index is linked on the landing page of Patreon. It's open to everybody. There are some links on that index that are public links. And if you're interested in anything and it links back to Patreon, then you can decide if it's maybe a good fit for you or not. Yeah, spring of 2018 on Patreon. But look at the index, Eve, because it's all there. It was all how I spin content. Or maybe it was thoughtful spinner content. Because I feel like, Becca, you had helped me with some of it too, in terms of like proofreading and stuff. Okay, let's go to group B. This was Amy, post number 89 in group B. So this was her medium wool as well as her fine wool. I think in the show notes I wrote that it was just medium wools, but this was fine and medium. So she says, I have processed fine wool merino before and hated it. It was very difficult to get the lanolin out, which made it really hard to process since it was so sticky and was so springy. The final roving was super neppy, totally. This that's a common thing, Amy, you're not the only one. This cornmeal must have had less lanolin since it washed up really easy with just a quick rinse, then condition with wash and dye, then thrown directly into the dye pot and dyed green. I love that color of green. It is just beautiful. Once dry, the cornmeal had a lovely hand and was drum carded, then dizzed into roving. Beautiful prep, and I love that twist angle. It is just gorgeous. The fin was one of the easiest raw fibers I have processed yet. I rinsed it a few times in the sink, soaked for 10 minutes in eucalyptus and dried. I absolutely love the handle of this fiber. It is variegated, but the white is so white and it feels soft and silky and would lend itself really nicely to combing. It is beautiful, that that fin that you've got there, Amy, just gorgeous. I would love to see if you have more, if you're planning on making something else with it. I absolutely love the handle. Oh, wait, I already read that. I wanted to treat both fibers the same way, so I carded and dizzed the fin off my drum carder just like the cornmeal. Both the cornmeal and fin were spun the same way, semi-woolen, long backwards draw with a pinch release drawback and smooth draft. 2-ply using a bracelet plying method. Both singles were very similar in size. However, after plying and setting the twist, the cornmeal puffed up significantly more and has a very soft hand. The fin feels slightly more silky, but not as airy and puffy, which you would expect because these are two very different types of wool. I actually have my fin study finally balled up from the skeins to talk about later in this show. So that's kind of cool. I dyed the cornmeal green because it was stained yellowish, and the cornmeal has about a 20 degree twist angle and 11 wraps per inch. Your twist angle looks like it's higher than that, Amy, on your cornmeal. In the finished skein, it looks a bit higher. The fin also has a 20 degree twist angle and 13 wraps per inch for a sport weight. So the cornmeal came out a worsted weight and the fin came out a sport weight. I would consider both next to the skin soft, but the cornmeal would make a really nice hat, cowl, next to the skin soft, really warm item. And the fin is more drapey, silky, and durable. It's just beautiful yarn, that fin. I love the natural color and would make a great cardigan or sweater. So thank you everybody for sharing. It's just absolutely, all of your yarns are beautiful. And I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to share with the community what you're making and to post your photos and stuff in the Ravelry threads, because that's how we all learn from one another. So that's awesome. Welcome to Sue and to Kelly. I think that's everybody who's joined in the last minute or so. Oh, and I didn't see Karma's here. Eve, everybody, it's so great to see everybody. I can't call you all out because we'd be here forever. Okay. So let's talk about my Shifty first. I talked about this quite extensively on the wool stream yesterday. And so I won't go into all of the nitty gritty details, but let me just move some stuff out of the way. Basically, this sweater has sort of proved to be a wee bit challenging in a really good way in terms of sort of figuring out what it is that I want to make and what it is that I want to create with this yarn, and whether or not I even want to do this project with this yarn or not. So yesterday on the wool stream, I had shown this sweater cast on. The ribbing had been done in 1x1, just like the pattern calls for, and I had knit the ribbing in 2.5 millimeter needles, because I was sort of treating this upper part of the yoke as a swatch. So the Shifty is a sweater designed by Andrea Mowry, and actually I have a picture of it because I printed the pattern finally. I don't normally print patterns, I just work with them off of the off of my phone or tablet. But I found this pattern I really needed to print it. So this is the Shifty for those who haven't seen it. It's knit out of spin cycle dyed in the wool, which is a sport weight yarn. It's mill spun, and it's just a really neat pattern for using hand spun yarn. Like, it just really suits itself. And actually there's quite a number of hand spun Shifty sweaters on Ravelry that you can scroll through and look at, and all of them are just beautiful. So I had cast on with 2.5 millimeter needles, and because my wraps per inch for this yarn sort of matches the sport weight in the pattern, and I had done the ribbing and I had done the short rows at the back neck to lift the back of the sweater up. So for those who are new to sweater knitting, you always have to lift the back neck up because you are generally shallower in the front than you are in the back, and you need that excess fabric at the back to sort of fit your body properly. And I was looking at it, and as I was knitting, I was like, this is too small. And I knew that it was too small, and I could tell that it was too small. And so I threw it on my dress form around the neck, and it was like this. It was really tight. And that's not enough ease that it's going to block out. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I was chatting on the wool stream about some other stuff that I was thinking about. But I decided after recording yesterday and after chatting with you guys that I was going to rip it out. And I had started the knitting off with knitting with my combo drafted yarn. So this Breed and Color study was from October of 2017, and I finished up all of my yarns in January, February of 2018. And I had done it was the whole point of the study was to look at combo spinning. So this yarn here is combo drafted. I took the 3 colorways, and the 3 colorways were Fractured Dawn, Lakeside, and Arctic Berries. So those were the 3 yarns and the 3 colorways. And one of them was, 2 of them had dye placed on them in a relatively repeatable colorway, and then the last one, which was Fractured Dawn, had it poured on in a more random way, and white was left in the fiber. And the idea was just to sort of reflect overall on sort of what everything looked like and how to combo spin these colors and what kind of yarns would be created in the end. So this was my combo ply, and if I pull these, I've wrapped the skein around because I pulled out my knitting, so all of the yarn I've re-wrapped around my ball. But you can really see in the middle of the ball, and these yarns are very dark. So unfortunately, even with optimal lighting, it's hard to really see the brightness of these. Like, you can see how dark this is. But with the combo ply, basically what I did was I took each of the braids and I stripped them the sections of them, because I think I spun a third. So it was a third combo drafted, a third combo drafted, a third combo plied, and then the last third of the braid was spun on its own. So I took each of the braids and stripped them, threw them into a basket, and I spun from that basket randomly, just end to end, each little nest, and then I plied them all together. So these are all 2-ply yarns, and this one ended up with a lot of striping, which you can see. It's not super blended, and what was happening when I started off the knitting on the Shifty was it was really striping a lot. There was no sort of blending or homogeny in the knitting already, and so I didn't like the look of it, and I didn't want that type of striping right up and the barber poling, which you can see in the yarn here on the side how much barber poling there is. That's going to look great in the sweater sort of down the road, but not right up at my neck where you're going to notice it. So I immediately wished that I had used my combo drafted yarn. So to make this combo drafted yarn, I'd done the same prep as my combo ply, but I took 3 nests at a time and drafted them at the same time. So the yarn is combo drafted, and then when it was plied on itself, so I spun 2 bobbins like that and then plied them. You can see how much more blended the yarn is. There isn't quite as much overt striping. So there's a lot more homogeny to it. It's very dark. You can see how dark it is. I have to admit, I really love this yarn. This was my favorite yarn in the study. But you can still see a little bit of barber poling. Some of the colors in there are sort of generally overall preserved. And then for the 3 individual yarns, I did a traditional 2-ply. So this very dark Arctic Berries, it is very dark, was the braid. I took it, stripped it in half, and then stripped each of those lengthwise strips. I think I stripped each one maybe 2 times, and then spun each to a bobbin end to end and plied. And that made this yarn. And actually the middle of this yarn, the colors really matched up quite well. It's just on the outside towards the end where there was a lot of barber poling. And then Lakeside, I did a 2-ply fractal. So this colorway had some lime green in it. It had this gorgeous tealy blue and that red that's in there that's also in Arctic Berries. I love this yarn. And then Fractured Dawn had the green that was present in the other 2, but also a little bit of purple, some sort of champagne, and a little bit of sky blue. And this actually was my most favorite yarn of the 3. This was my most favorite, but I loved all of them for their own, what they had to offer and what they had to add. So the other thing that I was really struggling with yesterday that I talked about quite extensively on the wool stream was this idea of sort of what we wear. And I struggle with it because my wardrobe over the years, I have had to, cull and donate a lot of things. And I'm working on this whole idea of capsule wardrobe and just trying to pare down how much stuff Mike and I have in the house. And as I was knitting on the original Shifty that I cast on the first time, I was looking at the colors and kind of not really sure that it was really what I would wear. And part of what I kept coming back to was I don't wear pullovers. They're too warm, and I don't tend. Oh, excuse me, my voice. And because I don't tend to wear pullovers, I'll wear a t-shirt or I'll wear a flannel. I wear flannel shirts a lot, which you guys know. My kind of default go-to is actually to pull on a cardigan. So yesterday I was wearing my Murray Chen all day. I need to put on new buttons. The buttons on it are too big and I need to get smaller buttons and put those on. But I find they're just, I just don't wear pullovers. So what I decided to do, and this is just another swatch but bigger. It's just a big swatch, and I might pull this out. I don't know. I'm not making any promises. When I cast on, instead of doing 1x1 rib. I did 2x2 rib for a little bit more of an elastic neck, which I think will actually fit me a little bit better. And I know you guys had a couple of questions, so I'll go back and answer Diane in just a sec. And then I added 6 stitches to my cast on. So my cast on is here at the front, and I added 6 stitches, and I'll try to show you that. I know it's dark. It's just because the yarn is so dark, so the camera is like it's trying to read it, and it thinks it's dark. And I'm not sure that I can brighten it, so let me just have a quick look. I'll just have a really quick look, and then I'll carry on. Oh, now I've frozen it. There we go. So I added 6 more cast on stitches, and you can see here that I have a marker at the front, and this is it will be my beginning of the round, but in the pattern, the beginning of the round is at the back neck. So I have another marker back here for the back neck, and this was so that I knew how to work my neck stitches at the back to build these short rows back here. And I used the Japanese short rows, which I've talked about in the show before, and how much I like them because they're very invisible and they're easy to work. I like them more than wrap and turn. So I worked the back neck, and now I'm ready to start working in the round. And the reason why I added those stitches at the front here, some of you have probably already guessed, but for the non-knitters out there or the beginning knitters, is because if this works out, my plan is to steek this. So what I did was I added these 6 stitches at the front. So basically what that will do is I will have my 2 rib stitches here to finish off my rib. And then you need 1 stitch here for your sort of pickup row to pick up your button band. And then a stitch, 1 stitch to sort of demarcate where your steeking line is. And then you need your steeking line and your actual cutting line. So the cutting line is right in between here where the marker is. And then on either side, I'll have my stitches to mark that. And basically what will happen is this will get folded back, and this will become the front of the cardigan, which is really hard to see when I hold it like that. So just let me just turn the camera here. I hope this makes sense for those. So this will become like the front of the cardigan here. That'll become the pickup row. And then I'll tack it back and sew some ribbon over top to sort of hide that. So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm not sure whether I'm going to keep going with it. To cut this and to steek it, I'm going to have to really like it. So I also, if I'm going to continue, I have to be prepared to rip it. And so I'm okay with that. Mike will help me if I do need to rip it, and he'll help me just keep the yarns untangled. He's really good about stuff like that. But that's my progress thus far. And like I said, it's already been ripped once and reworked because I just don't wear pullovers, and I have to acknowledge that and kind of work from there. Okay, you guys had a couple of questions, so let me just go back. Can just about any pullover be converted to a cardi by steeking? Yes, absolutely, Suzanne. It just takes confidence. And yeah, Jill, I think that's something that is interesting about, when we live in different climates, we have different needs for our clothing. And like for me here, I often need something underneath a jacket, but more often than not, if it's a pullover, I'm just way too hot because I always have to wear a rain jacket. So, it's not like I'm putting on like a big parka or something. It's just a rain jacket. Do you ever have a favorite and then change your opinion when it's knitted up? Yes, totally. Or not like something in the skein, but love it in the knitted item. Absolutely, Diane. So I have found more often than not that projects like this that I really struggle to start, and that I'm just kind of going through that like creative process of like, what do I want this to look like? What do I want to make? How do I want to do that? You know, what is this all going to look like? Those projects that there's this kind of turmoil that happens at the beginning, or maybe it happens during, or maybe it happens towards the end, they end up being my favorite projects. Which I think is really interesting. They end up being the projects that I'm the most proud of. They end up being the projects that I wear the most. And they're the ones that by kind of working through that creative process, I find I appreciate more and I appreciate the most. So, yeah. The other thing too about steeking is you don't have to necessarily add a steeking line and add a whole bunch of extra stitches and do all of this. I just wanted the rib to work out at the neck so that it would look right. But you don't have to. Like, you can leave it, you can sort of knit the pattern and then find the best cutting line at the front. Like, you have to mark the center front of the cardigan, but you don't have to sort of do all this stuff. I just am more comfortable if I have somewhere that I know where I'm going to sew to secure my steek and then to cut. I just like that sort of controllability. I will, if I do, tomorrow, I saw your comment about the video. If I do steek this, I will video the whole thing. Absolutely. So. Yeah, it's true, Rebecca. So she says if you invest a lot of reflection time in making something, it becomes much more than a commodity. It's true, and I think you really value something. Like this cowl that I'm wearing is probably one of my, or it's a shawl. This shawl is probably one of my most worn items that I've ever made. And I think a lot of that is because I was so invested in it. I had spun the yarn years ago, and really it was a very challenging spin because it was a brand new wheel. I was a brand new spinner, and the fiber, it was Dorset. It was difficult to spin because it was a little bit coarser. It was very grabby. It was difficult keeping it even. And the finished yarn was so beautiful, but it wasn't really super even. And I just felt like I had so much in it, emotionally. And then to knit and reknit and rip and reknit and try to figure out what I was going to do with it. By the time I ended up with this, which worked out really well, if I do say so myself, it's just one of my like most proud sort of things that I've ever made. So absolutely, it has to do with how much you invest in something, for sure. I think when stuff comes really easily and it just kind of happens, there is that creative flow that can happen, which is also really super wonderful. But I sometimes feel like I'm it's with certain projects, it's they just kind of work, and I just don't feel in that situation quite as invested in them, if that makes sense. Like my Marie Chen, I spun the yarn. It was beautiful. It worked out really well. I asked Katrina to dye it. I commissioned her. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And then, almost right away, I found a pattern that I really liked. I tried a couple other things, but got onto the Marie Chen almost immediately. And it knit up and it fit. Although it's a little bit too big, so I need to figure out if I'm going to throw it in the dryer and maybe kind of it down a little bit. But it just, it's one of my favorite sweaters that I've ever made, but it was overall, the creative process was very smooth. But I also started spinning it the week that my dad got so sick so suddenly. And so I think there was sort of this like emotionally, creatively like turning off and just making to make something, and processing all of it. So yeah, so interesting how these things work out. Anyways, I will keep you posted on this progress, and we'll chat about this more on the wool stream in a couple of weeks as well. Because I'm sure that this project is not going to be super, super, super smooth, because I am a wee bit worried about how the colors are going to work out and making sure that the blips are visible, because that's kind of what makes this sweater, is the texture. So I will keep you posted for sure. So over the weekend, I actually had an opportunity to pull out one of my fleeces that I had talked about back in the summer. This was one of the 9 fleeces that I split with some friends after the wool auction in June. And it's an annual event, but I'm not going this year. I do not need any more fleeces. I still have all 9 of them in my stash. Anyways, this was the Gotland Romney, and it was just a beautiful fleece. And Kelsey did just an incredible job with the washing. I had originally hoped that I would be able to help her with the washing, but because our summer went completely off the rails, she very graciously did it for us. Now, some of the tips, I had mentioned this yesterday in the wool stream. Some of the tips were really quite dirty and quite compacted, and it was difficult to kind of get them apart. So I've actually been trimming some of the tips just to get them off, because combing them out hasn't sort of helped with that. But I set up my hackle on the kitchen counter, and I've left it set up. So my goal is every day to comb through and create sort of between 5 and 6 nests of fibers, so that I can just keep getting this processed rather than trying to do it all at once and completely burn myself out. So I've just been like trying to create and add to this every day. And I've been using a little bit of lavender oil because it's very, once I start combing, it gets really, really staticky and really frizzy. And I created 2 yarn samples earlier this week. So I did a traditional 3-ply with the nests, and the singles were all spun the same way. So short forward, which is unusual for me, smoothing the fibers as I go. And this was the 3-ply. I'm so happy with this 3-ply. It's got this gorgeous sheen. It's soft, it's airy, it's light. I haven't weighed this little sample. I don't know how much it weighs, but it's light as air. Like, it's just unbelievable. I love this yarn so much. And then I also did a 2-ply sample because I was sort of wondering what it would be like as a 2-ply. And it's a little bit, I really love this yarn. It would be beautiful as a lace shawl. It's certainly next to the Skin Soft for sure. It has a slightly gentler twist angle because it didn't need, I was sort of thinking sweater yarn. And this I just was playing. So a little bit gentler, but you can still see that sheen. It's got a beautiful halo. Both yarns have a beautiful halo because of the long wool characteristics of the 2 breeds that were blended together. I think this yarn, the singles, could have been a little bit more firmly spun because you can see that it there's sort of like a fuzziness to it. It's not quite as sort of there's a word that I'm looking for and I just can't think of it. It's a little bit fuzzier. It's not quite as smooth as this yarn is. This yarn's a bit smoother. It's that little bit slightly higher twist angle. So it's been really fun working through the sampling process. So I spun this on my Lendrum because my Lendrum currently doesn't have a project on it. And yesterday, while I was sitting watching James at his skating for school, I did a little knitted swatch. Just move stuff out of the way so I can show you. So I washed the swatch at my mom's house yesterday while I was waiting to pick up James from something else that he had after school. And I didn't pin it. So I washed it, but I didn't pin it. It's Gotland, yes. It's Gotland Romney. And I don't know what the ratios are in terms of like which is which. And actually it's funny, Sue, that you would say about flicking them because somebody, I think it was you, Suzanne, who had suggested flicking yesterday in the wool stream. But I actually found the flicking wasn't enough to open up those tips. And I know Deb Robeson on her Know Your Wool course that's on Blueprint, she talks about if you find certain wools really, really itchy, just trim the tips, because it's the tips that are itchy that niggle at you. And so I thought, well, these are long wools. They do tend to the ends do kind of tend to pop out over time. So I thought, I'll just trim them off a little bit. It's like taking off like maybe 2 or 3 millimeters. Yeah, so Megan, it's funny that you would say about the Gotland being white, because yeah, it is so unusual. And that was part of the reason why Kelsey jumped on this fleece when she saw it, was because of the white. Because it's such a white fleece. Like, it's just unbelievable. So this is my knitted swatch. I'll hold it up here for just a sec. You can see, so on the bottom, wait, which end is which end? Yeah, so the bottom part down by my ring finger, this was knit on 4 millimeter needles, and then this top part was knit on 3.5 millimeter needles. So you can see that the top creates a much, actually you might not be able to see, they're both beautiful fabrics, but the top is a little bit better. And then down the side here, I did a 1x1 rib, just to see what a 1x1 rib would look like in this yarn, and how it would knit up and what it would be like. And I slipped the first stitch each row just to sort of see what that would look like and how that would work up. So this is the 4 millimeter side, and then this is the 3.5 millimeter side. I'm in love with this yarn. I just think it's fantastic. It's so much fun working through this process and figuring out, and I have so much fiber. That's a lot of fiber. So I have enough that I can sort of spend some time doing this and working through this and figuring out what I want to do and what I want to make and what I want to spin for. And I'm actually thinking that this will end up being a natural dye. So once all of the yarn is spun, I will naturally dye it. So after I do up a few more samples and a few more swatches, I'm actually going to do a little bit of natural dyeing if I get a few minutes. And we have a long weekend coming up in February, and I thought that would be a great opportunity because Mike will be home, and I might dye up a few of these skeins, like do some samples and dye up some of these skeins and sort of figure out what I want to do in terms of the color. I'm thinking something sort of warm, not necessarily yellow. I have a lot of yellow sweaters now in my stash, but I was also thinking maybe some indigo, but I don't have an indigo bat, so I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Ooh, champagne cream Gotland. That would be amazing. Yeah. Incredible. It certainly takes stamina, Alberto, to spin more yardage for sure. I find that's something that I really have to be excited about a project. I remember Eric, Katrina's husband, said to us when we first started working on the book, he was making sort of just a general comment about projects in general, and he said, if you're not excited about it at the beginning, imagine how you're going to feel halfway through. And her and I kind of sat there and we were like, yeah, you're right. It's so true. I love madder. I just don't look great in red. So I have some. I also have some logwood. I have some cochineal, which I have sort of been saving because I probably won't buy it again, just because it's ground up bugs. I have some marigold. What other colors do I have? I have some walnut. I have a whole bunch of colors in my stash. So I'm just sort of thinking, or like in my dye stash, they're natural dyes. So I've been kind of thinking about like what I wear, what I have, what I want to add, some of my favorite t-shirts, and what colors I sort of want. And fortunately, one of the colors that I really need in a cardigan is blue, which from natural dyes is really challenging. So onion skins is a really good idea, actually, Florence. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. Yeah, maybe I need a pinkish, antique-y, pinky yellow sweater. I don't know. We'll see. We will see. I will keep you guys posted. I love your ideas. So keep telling me. Yes, field trip to my house. Somebody had asked what brand of hackle I have. I do love it. I have Magicraft, a Magicraft hackle, and I actually, for Greta, because I know that you're local, I got it from Brenda from Penelope Fiber Arts. So she has a good price on them, and yeah, Brenda's so great to deal with anyhow. And then for mini combs, because I use a mini comb for the hackling. A lot of people buy the Magicraft combs when they get the Magicraft hackle, but I actually already had Louette mini combs, and I really, really like them. So yeah, so very, very happy with this little swatch, and really excited to sort of explore this some more and do some dye samples. I'm going to knit up some more samples as I continue to swatch, and then I'll have some samples that I can throw in the dye pot. So I will video it. I will share it. Don't worry. More to come on this marathon project. This is gonna be a marathon, not a sprint. That's for sure. I think this will probably actually be my 0 to hero. I had thought that maybe my 0 to hero would be something else and that I'd work from comb top for my 0 to hero. But then I was like, you know what? This is probably going to take the majority of the year, and there's no pressure to work really super quickly. I just want to have it like ongoing, and I'm probably going to ply as I go. For a variety of reasons, just to keep myself motivated and keep myself going. And so because I've got sort of dyeing to think about, and I've got prep to think about, and the spinning, and then the knitting, I think this is gonna be my 0 to hero. So for those who would like to participate in 0 to hero, or who are already participating, this is something that's going on in our Ravelry group. It is for everybody. You do not need to be a patron of the show. It is an opportunity to work from fiber, whether it's raw, unwashed, washed, whatever you want, or comb top, or carded prep, whatever. But the idea is to work all the way through to a finished item. Woven, knitted, crocheted, doesn't matter. So yeah, I think this is going to be my, well, I was thinking about it on the weekend. I was like, this is going to be it will be my 0 to hero. I'm committing. I'm publicly committing. So that was my unwashed 3-ply sample there. I know it's hard to see, but that was my unwashed. So that was unwashed, and then this was the washed. So it poofed up a little bit. My unwashed wraps per inch were 16, and my washed wraps per inch were, I'm not sure. I didn't actually check. Let's have a quick look. I have my spinner's control card right here, so let's have a really quick look. I'll change the cameras while we do this. So I have my Sukoplocky wraps per inch card here. I think they were 14. Yeah, it's 14. So that's pretty cool. 14 wraps per inch for the finished yarn. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a moment. You guys are so patient with me. I'm actually going to write it down because otherwise I'll forget. Oh my gosh, my pen. It keeps popping back. Isn't that weird? So I added that there. So washed 3-ply wraps per inch is 14. And what I'll do after the show is I'll actually put the wash sample here underneath. So that'll build out my card, and then I've got my ply back test in the other room. It's actually attached to my Lendrum, showing what my what the singles look like when they're plied back on themselves, so I know how much twist to add. And then I also will add the singles on here as well, so that I know what the singles look like. And the singles were spun to 32 wraps per inch. So that is that project. We spent a lot more time on that project than I thought we were going to, but I feel really excited about it, and it's nice to work with the natural, like with the natural wool again. Like I love working from the raw wool and to prep and work through that process, and It's really exciting. So I'm still working on my targi. Oh, sorry for the right in front of the mic there. Didn't mean to have this huge sound. I'm still working through my superwash targi and falling leaves on my e-spinner. Now that I'm sort of over halfway through this spin, I've really noticed that I've fallen into a nice rhythm with the spinning. Like I was sitting here the other day watching a couple of YouTube videos, just catching up with people. And I was really finding that I was really getting into like this really nice rhythm. And, the uptake on the e-spinner was just perfect. And it was really nice. I have to get used to so it's a squeeze and slide flyer. And I find because the e-spinner doesn't stop, it doesn't slow down, it just spins, right? Which I really like for continuity, because I can just sit there and spin and spin and spin, but I forget to turn it off and I forget to move my hook, my guide. So you can see I've got like fiber that's built up quite a bit back here and not so much over on this side, and it's just because I kept forgetting. So I do cross lace my flyer, so the yarn goes over the other side, the other arm, and then onto the bobbin. And part of the reason for that is to help with tension. And I find it really helps to load the bobbin a bit more evenly, and I can spin in that one spot for a little bit longer because it kind of slides, the yarn kind of slides back and forth on the arm a little bit, like it kind of slides back and forth like this, and you get this really nice filling of the bobbin, and it helps with your tension. So if you're struggling with tension and getting it just right, think about cross lacing, and you might sort of alleviate some of that, especially if you don't like a really strong uptake and you don't like it pulling really hard. Cross lacing can alleviate some of that. Now, if you have your uptake too high and you cross lace, it's going to put a lot more pressure on your singles. So you need to make sure that you're putting in enough twist to twist lock your fiber and make sure that it doesn't just drift apart, because you will end up with broken singles because it'll just drift apart and there's not enough, it's not twist locked enough, it's not twisted enough to really hold it together. Does that make sense? Okay. You guys are doing BFL. That poor fleece has been waiting for me for almost a year. That's awesome, Tamar. Good work on pulling something out of stash. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to share today was my Copenhagen, and it's actually behind me on my dress form. So I'm just going to move it forward. If I put it here, and if I sit here, can you guys still hear me? Because I can move the mic. Let me move the mic anyhow. Okay, so what I wanted to mention about my Copenhagen really quickly was basically that so it's almost done. I'm almost finished the cast off edge, the bottom edge, sorry. And I've put in the pockets. So these are created in a really interesting way by sort of knitting this strip of fabric, and it gets tucked down inside. And she goes through in the pattern like exactly how to do that and what to do and how to manipulate your yarn. And then you're knitting the button band at the same time. So there's a 1x1 edge here on both sides that you're knitting at the same time that you cast on at the top neck edge and knit you continue it down after you've started the body stitches. And then of course you've got your raglan increases, and my stitches for my sleeves are on hold right now. And then you sort of work down, you work a couple of decreases in here and then a couple of increases for your hip, and sort of continue on down until you're done. So the pocket will goes to about here on underneath, because you need to make sure it's long enough to accommodate the pocket. And then I've sort of knit about an inch past that right now, and I've got sort of another couple of inches to do of like stockinette stitch, and then I'll have the bottom ribbing down here, and it'll end sort of about here. So I've got about 4, maybe 5 more inches of knitting to do. I don't have a measuring tape right here to sort of see, but I'm at 13 inches right now, and I want the sweater to be about 19 inches, maybe 17 inches actually, I think was what I had thought. 17 inches, so about 4 more inches of knitting, and then that'll be cast off. So this was my Falkland hand spun, and I'm holding it with some silk mohair from Farmer's Daughters Yarns, I think is what they're called. So yeah, that's the other side. You can see, like, I alternated skeins through the whole thing, so it's quite well blended. And I was saying on the wool stream yesterday that I sort of had a bit of an aha moment, because I had been thinking that, you know, this was sort of going to be the color, and that was it, and sort of leaving it at that. But I've actually been thinking about possibly asking Katrina to over dye this and commissioning her to do that, because she could over dye it in like really dark green to create a dark green, or even maybe a bit of a, like, it might be a bit bluey because of the yellow, because this is the back of the sweater, and it's just very tonal, but there's definitely like some striping across here. But you know, when you throw like I don't have one right here, but when you throw a shawl over top, you know, it has a really nice look to it. It has a nice feel to it. It's got a nice shape. I really like it. And I think when you add buttons, that'll draw the eye as well. Because I think it was Eve that had suggested some wooden buttons, and I think it would just make the sweater, you know, give it sort of that very natural kind of a look. And then, you know, this, not necessarily something like this underneath, but just like a t-shirt like what I'm wearing right now, underneath, it would just have a nice look to it. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And actually I need to adjust my measurements on my dress form, because my measurements have changed. And so this actually in real life would kind of be more like this on me, because my hips are a little bit smaller than they were. I think just from all of my lifting and everything, and all my CrossFit and whatnot. So I think it's just my measurements have changed significantly. So I need to adjust my dress form so that I can actually get a really good idea of sort of how this is actually really going to work out. I was going to mention about that really quickly before we say goodbye. You know, we talk about knitting, you know, dress forms and measurements, and we talk about sorry, I just banged the table. Sorry about that, you guys. You know, we talk about measurements, and you know, I sometimes will say, you know, one of the best investments that you can make if you're going to do a lot of garment knitting, especially if you're going to be sewing and whatnot, is to invest in a dress form. They do go on sale once in a blue moon. And that's actually how I got mine. It was a Christmas gift from my in-laws, and it went on sale. It was just a great timing. Do your measurements every so often and check to see after you adjust it whether or not those are still your measurements. Because if you buy a dress form that is sort of the right size range for you, because there's different ones that have different sizes. So my Diana doll is like the, you know, whatever the one was that includes sort of measurements for the sort of, I think it's like size 1 to size 10 or something like that, for women's like clothing sizes in the States. And then the next one up was like size 10 to size 20, I think. And then they had a male dress form, and that was different sizing. But you know, you get it, and you set it up, and you put it together, and you adjust it for your height as well, for hemming, especially like skirts and dresses and stuff. And then you leave it, right? And you don't kind of do anything about it after that. Like, you sort of adjust it for your bust, adjust it for your arms and your hips and your waist, and then you sort of walk away, and then you start using it over the years. But I find from like pinning it, manipulating it, playing with it, pulling things on and off of it, it slowly over time changes size. like the neck adjustment will increase a little bit, or it'll decrease a little bit. The bust will increase and decrease as you kind of push and move things around and manipulate. So check your own measurements every so often, even if it's only like once a year. And then compare them to your dress form, because you want to make sure that they're accurate. And I will often add an inch. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I add an inch to my dress form to take into account underwear, jeans, particularly around my waist and my hips. So I add that extra inch to my dress form. So she's always 1 inch everywhere bigger than I am in real life. And I do that for ease, because I don't like my clothes really tight. And I also really like taking into account sort of some of that stuff like jeans and underwear, etc., without having to actually factor that in. I can just throw it on her and see, oh yeah, that's sort of how I want it to fit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Dan, that's a great idea. I never thought about putting a bra on her. That's a great idea. It just, because it changes the measurements. That's the thing. Like, even especially if you wear padded bras, if depending on the type of clothing that you wear underneath, you have to think about that. And like jeans, for example, like today I'm wearing high-waisted jeans, so they come up to above my hip bone. That affects, and I like them because I don't have to pull at them and adjust them and whatnot. Like, I love that high-waisted jeans have finally come back in style. The thing is, though, if you're making something and you want to take into account that additional fabric, you need to sort of be aware of that in your mind. Otherwise, especially like for those who love knitting pullovers, your bottom ribbing or the fit of the bottom part of your sweater could actually be quite a bit tighter than you wanted it to be. So just some of those things to keep in mind. Yeah. Plus, it will let you know if the armhole or the scoop neck is right. That's so true, Suzanne. So true. And actually, because this is probably too much information, but this is how we learn. I wear a lot of sports bras. And so I find that because the straps are thicker and they're bigger and they go across the back of my neck here at the back, if I'm wanting to be able to wear something sort of in all seasons, all days, throw it on over top. Like yesterday I was wearing my Marie Chen. I need to be able to take that into account, because I want stuff to fit properly and I want things to look right. So yeah. All right. Yeah, that's such a great point, Megan, about measure your favorite sweaters and that fit you well, and you'll get an idea of what length and ease you enjoy. That's so true. One of my most favorite sweaters that I ever bought was from H&M. It was when H&M had just first come to Canada, and they were only in Toronto at that point, and Mike and I were going back and forth so often because he's from downtown Toronto. And so he was still working in Toronto. We were traveling back and forth when we first met that first year, and then into our marriage, even the first couple of years of our marriage. And I remember being in Eaton Center and the H&M was there, and I saw this sweater and I didn't buy it. I ended up going back a couple of days later, and it's this gray sweater, and it comes down to my knees, and it's got pockets, and it's quite long. It's actually heavier than it sort of looks. Anyways, I still have it. I still wear it all the time, but it's one of those sweaters that I've never been able to create it in a knitted item. It just, no matter what I've done, it's just never quite the same, but the measurements are what have been so useful. So yeah. Oh, well, there you go. If you spend $1,500, you can get a full body custom dress form. Holy smokes. You know what the problem is with that, though? There's people out there that would want to do that, and that's awesome. But what if your shape changes? If you haven't had kids yet and you're planning on having children, your shape is going to change. And if you change your lifestyle, or if something happens and, you may not always be the same size. If you're spending $1,500 on a dress form, maybe you don't care because you'll just replace it with another one. But For me, I really like the idea of being able to adjust. There is a couple of, there's some software out there. I know it came up on my Instagram feed a while ago. You can get, like you can input your measurements and it'll sort of like create this sort of body for you, and it'll give you, you know, tips and tricks around like what would look nice on you. But I think something a little bit more general, like what Amy Herzog does with the Fit to Flatter stuff, is kills a lot of birds with one stone. Like if you know your measurements, you can really start to sort of figure out what's going to look nice on you and what's not, and why you tend to navigate toward certain things and not toward others. So yeah. Oh yeah, menopause, that'll change your body shape for sure. Yeah, all these different things. I mean, it's all hormonal, but you know, it's important stuff to take into account. I know some people have done, yeah, Rebecca just said about making one out of duct tape, but I know that you can do one out of paper mache. I've seen that. There's tutorials on YouTube to do dress forms out of paper mache, and I think you just put on like a bodysuit underneath because you need to be able to get it off, and people do that. So yeah. Diane, Christmas changes my body shape. I think it changes all of ours. And I find like in the summer I slim down, and in the winter I don't, and yeah, it's all part of it. But it is good to check your measurements every so often and change them on your dress form if you have one. So okay, I think we will say goodbye and leave it there. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. There is still the special offer running on certain Patreon tiers for the How I Spin a Sock Study ebook. You get it for free when you sign up to certain tiers. That's going to continue to move around and be for different tiers over the coming days, months, years, probably months and years. And then if you want a soft cover copy, there is a link in the show notes down below on patreon.com/wellforpearls or on wellforpearls.com if you prefer to have a soft cover copy. And those are printed to order. So there is a teeny tiny bit of a delay. Oh, Pernil, you did a paper mache body form. That's so cool. And you just had a t-shirt. That's so cool. That's really awesome. I know people do them. They're really, really, they're really effective. So yeah. Okay. I think that's everything. So yeah, soft cover of the How I Spin Sock Study. The links are down below. And if you're still wanting to get your hands on Unbraided, the book that Katrina and I wrote, the links are down below for that as well. I hope that everybody is well. Have an awesome week. Have a great weekend. I'm hoping that the snow here starts to melt and go away. James has soccer tonight. I'm hoping it won't be canceled. So all the fields were closed last night. So fingers crossed that they're open tonight for him. And I hope you guys all are doing really well and making all the things. And until next time, happy spinning. Bye, guys.